Why is this called a mini moon, Bob?
Well, the moon's at apogee right now, tonight. That's its farthest point because the moon's orbit, like every other orbit in the universe, unlike what we believed a few centuries ago, is an ellipse. So it's not a circle at all. And every elliptical orbit gets closer and farther. I think everyone realizes that Earth gets closer to the sun at some times of the year and farther away at other times. Moon does the same thing, except the moon varies quite a bit. From surface to surface, it can come as close as 216,000 miles or as far away as 248,000 miles. That's quite a difference. So this is
That's
the
quite a
perigee
variation.
position that we're showing you here. And the
So,
apogee
so you said
position, when it's farthest away, that's what we've got tonight.
so these two terms, Bob. Apogee is what's commonly referred to when it comes to the moon, is when we talk about a mini moon and it coincides with a full moon or a new moon, in fact. And then you use this other term as well, perigee, when it's closest towards the Earth. And we see another type of moon. We give that another name as well, don't we, here at SLU?
A supermoon is what
A
we've been calling it
supermoon.
for the last few years. This actually looks bigger than the eye would see it because if you push this far enough away so that it looked the same size as it does to the eye, and you actually observed it, believe it or not, that would be just on the edge of what you would notice. It doesn't look that way. Right now on our computer monitors, it looks like there's a huge difference. There it is. This shows it very nicely. There's a 14% in size difference between the smallest or farthest away possible moon and the closest moon. And there we have them together. Believe it or not, once again, if you actually saw them side by side, if you could, in the night sky, you can't, of course. We only have one
It
moon.
would be,
You can't ever
yeah.
see two moons, the farthest away moon next to the closest possible moon. But if you could, it would right on the edge. It would be right on the edge of what the human eye is capable of noticing. Still, nonetheless, it is noticeable. And the moon is, we only have one of them, and it's the perfect circle of the night. There are no other perfect circles, regarded as sacred throughout history, especially to the ancient Greeks. Even through telescopes, we can't find any perfect circles. The other planets are always off, they're squashed, they're elliptical. So I mean, the moon is special, no question about it.
Now, without further ado, I want to welcome editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, Janice Stillman, to our show tonight. Janice, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to SLU for the first time.
Hi, Paul. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. Well, we're seeing these live images coming in from the SLU observatories tonight. And one of the reasons we love this partnership with you folks at the Old Farmer's Almanac is your ability to add this very different perspective and context to the topics that we present. And one that really stems from history and folklore. So each of these full moons throughout the year have their own unique names. Now, this one, the full moon for April, among other things, is called the full pink moon. But how did it get that name? Why is it called the pink moon?
Well, step back a few hundred years. Before this country was really settled and Native Americans lived here. And they, of course, lived all across the country, and there were numerous tribes. And so they were experiencing all kinds of weather and climate conditions back then. And they actually assigned the moon's names. They didn't have radio or internet or paved roads or newspapers or date books or anything to kind of keep them on schedule. So
Or the
they
Old
were
Farmer's
really
Almanac.
aware of nature. They watched what happened around them. They looked for changes and signs. And one of those was the timing of what happened in nature outside around the time of the full moon. And they became aware that the moss pink, it's a wild ground phlox, would hearken the spring, and it would appear around the time of the fourth full moon, just after the winter, you know. So
Yep.
the Algonquins in particular called the moon the pink moon.
Why does the Old Farmer's Almanac make a point of collecting and recording these historical interpretations our ancestors made of their environment, like the folklore, surrounding the moon?
Well, the Old Farmer's Almanac is first and foremost a calendar of the heavens. And the rise and set of the sun, the rise and set of the moon, and all the moon's phases and various other events in the sky are a core part of the almanac. And the moon and its phases traditionally, rather like the Native Americans and everybody since then over several hundreds of years, has always been an indicator of when to do a lot of things, say gardening, planting above ground or below ground, fishing during the period from the new moon to the full moon is often the best. And then there are other small periods, if you will, in between the various phases. Best days to do a number of things. There's a lot of lore about the moon, and the Old Farmer's Almanac perpetuates a lot of traditional values. So our astronomical data, all of the events that are announced and predicted for the whole year in the sky, are factual and reliable. In fact, Bob Berman, who was on earlier, is one of our astronomers and provides a lot of that information. But then you've got the tradition, the folklore, because the Old Farmer's Almanac is about yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And in the same way that the Native Americans would practice, it's also about the traditions and observing nature. So it's all about noticing what's around you. In the world we live in today, so often that gets overlooked.